Imagine this. You stand at the precipice of a vast, indifferent ocean. The wind whips around you, tasting of salt and an ancient, untamed freedom. Before you, the horizon stretches, indistinguishable from the sky, a seamless blend of possibility and void. Behind you, a path you've walked for years, perhaps decades, vanishes into a comforting, yet suffocating forest of familiar routines, expected narratives, and borrowed truths. You've played the part assigned to you, worn the masks meticulously crafted by others' expectations, and recited lines written by a world that rarely asks who you truly are, only what you can do. You've lived, certainly, breathed, eaten, loved, perhaps even achieved. Yet a whisper persists, a low thrum beneath the surface of your existence, suggesting that what you call life might merely be an elaborate prelude, a dress rehearsal for a play whose lead actor has yet to step onto the stage. The gnawing feeling that you are a silhouette, perfectly outlined against a dazzling backdrop, but lacking the vibrant, messy, authentic colors that define a truly lived experience. This isn't about mere discontent, it's a deeper tremor, a fundamental unease with the very architecture of your being. You've pursued goals that felt right, only to find their attainment hollow. You've chased happiness, only to discover it's a fleeting visitor, often mistaken for distraction. You've sought purpose, only to be handed neatly packaged ideals that fit everyone, and therefore, no one. Consider the unsettling paradox. In a world saturated with information, connection, and opportunity, why does a profound sense of unfoundness persist? Why do so many feel like eternal tourists in their own lives, observing rather than participating, imitating rather than originating? We are told to find ourselves, a cliché so worn it has lost all meaning, yet the desperation behind it remains raw and potent. What if finding yourself isn't about discovery, but about creation? What if the self isn't a static artifact waiting to be unearthed, but a dynamic masterpiece waiting to be sculpted, deliberately, fiercely, and with an unwavering hand? What if the relentless pursuit of an external you, the successful you, the happy you, the loved you, has blinded you to the raw, untamed force that is you, waiting to be unleashed? This isn't about conforming to a new ideal, but shattering the very notion of ideals imposed from without. This isn't about searching for purpose in the distant future, but about igniting a purpose that already smolders within the forgotten chambers of your soul. Have you ever felt the faint echo of a greater potential, a more authentic self, trapped beneath layers of societal programming, fear, and self-doubt? A persistent hum that suggests the life you're living, while perhaps comfortable, is but a pale imitation of the vibrant, visceral existence that truly awaits. This isn't a call to simply change your circumstances, but to fundamentally alter your relationship with existence itself, to recognize that true life doesn't begin with a birth certificate, but with an internal awakening, an awakening to the audacious, terrifying, yet utterly liberating truth that you are not merely living a life, but are the singular architect of your life. And until you step into that role, fully and without reservation, you haven't truly begun to live. The question, then, isn't if you will find yourself, but when you will dare to create yourself. And what unseen forces have conspired to keep you from this ultimate act of rebellion? The forces that conspire against you are not external tyrants or grand, malevolent entities. They are far more insidious, for they reside within the very architecture of your mind, installed so early and with such precision that you mistake their walls for the boundaries of reality itself. This is the hidden problem. You have been meticulously trained to abandon yourself in exchange for acceptance. The life you've been living is not a journey of self-discovery, but a masterclass in self-effacement. This process begins in the quietest moments of childhood. You learned, not through explicit instruction, but through the subtle currencies of approval and disappointment, which parts of your authentic self were acceptable and which were to be hidden away. The wild, untamed impulses, The inconvenient questions, the raw emotions, these were sanded down, polished, or discarded in favor of a more agreeable, more predictable version of you. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung gave this version a name: the persona. It is the social mask, the carefully curated face you present to the world. It is your job title, your role in the family, your collection of opinions borrowed from the cultural ether. The persona is a tool for navigating the social world, but the tragedy is that you have mistaken the tool for the user. You have forgotten that you are the one wearing the mask. You believe you are the mask. This is where the philosophical roots of your unease run deepest. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this phenomenon as the triumph of herd morality. Society, he argued, does not reward the unique, the powerful, the self-determined individual. It fears them. Instead, it champions the safe, the obedient, the predictable. The herd offers warmth, security, and a simple set of rules for what is good and evil. To step outside of this enclosure is to risk isolation, ridicule, and failure. And so, you learned to internalize the gaze of the herd. You became your own shepherd and your own sheep, constantly guiding yourself back toward the safety of the fold, trimming away any part of your being that might be too sharp, too strange, too brilliant for the collective. Your deepest fear is not of death, but of judgment, the judgment of the herd. Why do you cling so desperately to this curated identity? The existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre would say it is because you are terrified of the alternative. Absolute freedom. He famously declared that man is condemned to be free. This freedom is not a gentle gift. It is a terrifying burden. It means there is no pre-written script, no cosmic instruction manual, no inherent purpose to your existence. You, and you alone, are responsible for creating your own essence, your own values, your own meaning. The weight of that responsibility is crushing. It is the dizziness one feels when staring into the abyss of infinite possibility. It is far easier, far more comforting to accept a pre-made identity, to follow a path laid out by others, than to face the raw, unblinking terror of total self-reliance. Your soul barters its limitless freedom for the gilded cage of social approval. This internal bargain, this silent contract to trade authenticity for acceptance, is the source of the gnawing emptiness. The parts of you that were exiled, your shadow, as Jung would call it, do not simply vanish. They fester in the unconscious, gathering strength. This suppressed energy manifests not as overt rebellion, but as a low-grade hum of anxiety, a persistent feeling of being an imposter in your own life, inexplicable bouts of melancholy, or self-sabotaging behaviors that defy all logic. You find yourself chasing achievements that bring no fulfillment, seeking relationships that only amplify your loneliness, and accumulating possessions that do nothing to fill the void. You are living the life of the persona while your true self starves in the darkness, and its faint, desperate cries are the very source of your existential dread. You have become a ghost haunting the machinery of a life that looks successful from the outside but feels hollow from within. The hidden problem is not that you are lost, it is that you have willingly abandoned the only person who could ever truly guide you, yourself. And the consequences of this abandonment are woven into the very fabric of your reality, shaping your world in ways you are only just beginning to perceive. This abandonment of the self is not a passive decay. It is an active, soul-crushing labor that you perform every single day. Its consequences are not loud, cataclysmic events, but look at how this unseen force dictates your choices. Without a stable, internal core of values and desires, your decision-making process becomes a frantic exercise in external validation. You stand at a crossroads, and instead of consulting an inner compass, you survey the landscape for signposts erected by others. What would a successful person do? What will my family approve of? What choice will garner the most praise on social media? This is the tyranny of the should. Your life path ceases to be a unique journey and becomes a paint-by-numbers canvas, pre-drawn by a culture that values conformity above all else. The tragic result is a life haunted by the phantom limb of your unlived potentials, a constant, low-grade ache for the risks you never took, the passions you never pursued, and the truths you never dared to speak. This internal void poisons your connections with others. You enter relationships not as a whole person seeking to connect with another, but as a carefully constructed persona seeking validation for its performance. Conversations become transactions. Vulnerability is a calculated risk, not a genuine offering. You find yourself in a hall of mirrors, where your mask reflects another mask, and true intimacy remains an impossible dream. This is the profound loneliness of the modern age, to be perpetually surrounded by people, yet to be fundamentally unseen. You perform the role of a friend, a lover, a parent, but the authentic self, the one capable of deep, unconditional connection, remains imprisoned, watching the charade from behind a one-way mirror. The architecture of this prison is reinforced by the very wiring of your brain. Your mind, an organ evolved for survival, not existential fulfillment, actively works to keep you inside this cage. This is the power of cognitive biases. Through confirmation bias, your brain meticulously filters reality, seeking out any evidence that validates your persona while aggressively ignoring anything that might challenge it. You scroll through feeds that reinforce your borrowed opinions. You surround yourself with people who reflect your mask back at you, and you interpret every event as proof that your prescribed path is the only one. Furthermore, the status quo bias makes the familiar feel safe, even if it is agonizing. The known suffering of your persona-driven life feels neurologically preferable to the terrifying, unknown freedom of authenticity. Your own mind becomes the warden, convincing you that the prison bars are there for your own protection. Zoom out, and you will see your personal prison is but a single cell in a vast societal penitentiary. Our culture has perfected the art of manufacturing identity. Advertising agencies spend billions to convince you that your emptiness can be filled with a product. Political ideologies offer ready-made enemies and simplistic narratives to give you a sense of belonging and moral certainty. Social media platforms provide a global stage for the performance of the persona, where lives are curated into highlight reels and worth is measured in likes and shares. As Aldous Huxley warned, we are not controlled by overt force, but by an endless supply of distractions and pleasures that keep us too entertained to notice our own enslavement. You live in a civilization of spectacles, where manufactured outrage passes for passion and virtual signaling replaces genuine virtue. It is a society of ghosts, each performing for an audience of other ghosts, mistaking the applause for proof of life. This is the ultimate consequence. Your vital life energy, the sacred fire that is yours alone to wield, is being siphoned away to fuel a system that does not care about your existence. You are kept busy, anxious, and perpetually dissatisfied, chasing goalposts that are always moving. The system thrives on your belief that the solution is always external. The next promotion, the next relationship, the next purchase. It is a grand, hypnotic illusion designed to keep you from ever looking inward, from discovering the terrifying, glorious truth that you already possess everything you need. The trap is not that you are powerless. The trap is that you have been convinced to give your power away. The question now becomes a scream. How do you begin the rebellion? How do you break the chains when you cannot even see them? The rebellion begins not with a roar, but with a whisper, a radical shift in perspective that shatters the very foundations of what you believed to be true. It's a profound, internal upheaval that reclaims your sovereign territory, your mind. The counterintuitive solution isn't to find yourself, but to fiercely, unapologetically create yourself. To realize that the self isn't a buried artifact waiting for discovery, but a living sculpture waiting for your chisel, your vision, and your relentless will. This revolutionary act demands that you first recognize the colossal lie you've been living, the pervasive myth of objectivity in selfhood. You've been told, implicitly and explicitly, that there's a right way to be, a universal template for a good or successful person. But this is the ultimate deception. Your true self is not a fixed destination on a map. It is the unique trajectory you forge through the wilderness of existence. As Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, observed, man's search for meaning is not a quest for an abstract, universal meaning, but a very specific personal meaning. This meaning is not given. It is chosen, created, and enacted by you. It means consciously choosing to displease some people, to confound others, and to perhaps even be misunderstood by many. This is where your strength is truly tested. You must cultivate a fierce internal compass, one that points not to where others expect you to go, but to where your own deepest values and desires compel you. This requires relentless self-inquiry. What truly ignites your soul? What principles, if lived out fully, would make you feel profoundly alive, even if no one else ever knew? Historically, those who broke free understood this fundamental truth. Consider the Renaissance artists, defying religious dogma and societal conventions to paint the human form with unprecedented realism and emotional depth. Their self was not found in conformity, but forged in the crucible of individual expression. Or the existentialist philosophers, who, in the aftermath of 2 world wars, dared to declare that meaning was not preordained, but had to be courageously invented by each individual. They did not wait for permission to be themselves. They simply were. They embraced the awesome burden of freedom and transformed it into the ultimate act of creation. To reclaim control, you must cultivate radical self-awareness. This isn't just introspection. It's a forensic examination of your beliefs, behaviors, and motivations. Every decision you make, every word you speak, every emotion you feel, trace it back to its origin. Is it a genuine expression of your nascent self, or is it a reverberation of external programming? This is where practices like mindfulness, journaling, and deep reflection become not merely therapeutic tools, but instruments of liberation. You must learn to observe your own thoughts and emotions without judgment, recognizing them as fleeting phenomena, not as immutable truths. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. This distinction is the key to unlocking the prison door. Furthermore, you must actively dismantle the stories you've been told about who you are. The narratives spun by your family, your culture, your past failures, your perceived limitations. These are not immutable facts. They are just stories. And if they do not serve the burgeoning, authentic self you are creating, you have the absolute right to rewrite them. This is not delusion. It is the ultimate act of self-authorship. What new story will you tell about yourself? What epic journey will you embark upon, not because it's expected, but because it pulses with your unique, undeniable vitality? This is not a passive journey of introspection. It is an active, often brutal process of deconstruction and reconstruction. It means facing the uncomfortable truth that the you you've known is largely an illusion, a convenient construct. But in the ashes of that illusion lies the fertile ground for something far more powerful, far more real. You are not merely discovering who you are actively deciding who you will become. And this decision, this audacious act of self-creation, is the truest beginning of life itself. But what is the ultimate truth that binds all these fragments together, and how does it irrevocably redefine your perception of reality? The ultimate truth that binds these fragments is not a complex philosophical doctrine or a hidden secret, but a realization so simple it is radical, and so profound it shatters the very lens through which you perceive reality. It is this: you are not the sculpture, nor are you the sculptor. You are the silent, formless marble from which both are born. You are not the character in your life's story, with its fears, desires, and dramas. You are the boundless awareness in which the entire story unfolds. All your life, you have been engaged in a desperate struggle of identification. First, you identified with the persona, the mask given to you by the world. You believed you were your job, your reputation, your successes, and your failures. The suffering this caused was immense, for this identity was a fragile construct, constantly threatened by the judgment of others and the inevitability of change. Then, you embarked on the rebellion, the act of self-creation. You began to identify with the sculptor, the one who chooses, wills, and builds a new self from the ashes of the old. This was a necessary and powerful step, a reclaiming of agency. But even this is not the final truth. To identify with the sculptor is to remain trapped in the realm of doing, striving, and becoming. The final, most liberating realization is to let go of identification altogether. It is to understand that your true nature is not something you do or achieve. It simply is. It is the still, silent consciousness that was present before the first mask was ever worn and will be present after the final story is told. It is the vast, empty sky that holds the fleeting clouds of your thoughts, the storms of your emotions, and the brilliant sun of your joy. You have spent your life fixated on the weather, believing you are the storm, when in fact, you are the sky that allows the storm to be. This paradigm shift makes all your past struggles devastatingly clear. The gnawing emptiness you felt was not a sign that something was missing from you, but a call from your true nature, reminding you that you were trying to cram your infinite self into a finite box. The constant anxiety was the friction created by identifying with transient thoughts and feelings. The fear of judgment was the terror of the fictional character, terrified of being written out of the script, in realizing you are the awareness itself, the context, not the content. You don't destroy the ego or the character. You subsume it. You see it for what it is, a temporary vehicle for navigating this world, not the driver. Imagine a wave in the ocean. For its entire existence, the wave believes it is a separate entity. It fears its own dissolution, its inevitable crash upon the shore. It compares itself to other waves, bigger, smaller, faster, slower. This is the life of the persona, the life of the ego. The ultimate truth is the moment the wave realizes it is not in the ocean. The wave is the ocean. Its form is temporary, but its essence, water, is eternal and interconnected with all. The crash upon the shore is not death. It is a return to the source, a reintegration with its true, boundless nature. Living from this truth changes everything. You still engage with the world. You still pursue goals. You still feel love and loss. But you do so from a place of profound inner peace. You wear your roles and identities like a loose garment, not a second skin. You can play the game of life with passion and commitment, but you are no longer defined by winning or losing because you know your true self is beyond the game. Your actions become infused with a new quality. They arise not from a desperate need to prove or define yourself, but from an authentic expression of the consciousness flowing through you. So, stand again at that precipice overlooking the vast, indifferent ocean. But this time, see it differently. The wind that whips around you is your own untamed spirit. The horizon, that seamless blend of possibility and void, is the landscape of your own consciousness. The path behind you is no longer a source of regret, but a story that has brought you to this moment of awakening. Life does not begin when you find the perfect mask or sculpt the perfect self. Life begins when you realize you are the silent, watchful presence behind all masks, the source of all creation. Your task is not to become someone, but to unbecome everything you are not and rest in the luminous, empty fullness of what you already are. This is the ultimate rebellion. This is the ultimate freedom. This is where your true life begins.